For our next piece, let's work on this right up here. This piece looks like it could provide some interesting challenges, so let's work on this. I think I'll use Booleans to create the circles or holes here on the piece. But I think we're also going to have to use the solidify modifier to give it a bit of thickness, because Booleans don't work through an object that's only a single polygon thick. So we'll need to add some thickness to this as well. But perhaps the way to begin this is with a polygon plane. I'm going to go to my side view and the orthographic view. Let's take a look at it here from this view. I think we could create a polygon plane right up here on top, split it down the middle, use the mirror modifier as we extrude down to this side, and it will also mirror over to the other side. And then once we've done that, then we can add our solidify modifier and then do the Booleans. So let's begin here with putting the cursor, say, right here. And let's go over to the Create tab and create a polygon plane. And there we are. Now, for this polygon plane, let's tab into Edit mode and press Control R. And I'm going to put an edge right here in the middle. And instead of clicking, to make sure that it's going to stay exactly in the middle, I'm going to hit the Enter key twice so I don't accidentally move the edge with the mouse. Now I'll grab this face right over here and delete it. And then I can come over to the Modifiers panel and choose a Mirror modifier. That now is mirroring in the X-axis right here. And I'll also choose Clipping so that the points down the middle here are merged together. Alright, so now that we've mirrored that, I'm just going to move this in, and as you can see, when I move the edge on one side, the other side comes along. I'll also click this button right here so we can see the edit cage on the mirrored half as well. Alright, so if I bring that in pretty tight like that and go back to the side view, we can see that perhaps I need to bring this up just a little bit more, so I'll tab into object mode and I'll bring that up just a hair. In addition, I need to scale it in the Y, so S and Y, and scale that in just a bit. I want it to fit on this piece right here. Maybe scale that out again. There we go. And now I feel like I'm going to need to see this in multiple viewports. So to create a quad view here, I can press Control-Alt-Q, and now I can see this in a few different viewports. This viewport here I can tumble around in and take a look at it from the perspective view. This is our top view, front, and side view. Now I can tab into Edit mode and begin extruding and bending this down so it fits right over that extruded part right here. So I'll hit E and click, and then G and bring this out and down just a bit. Once again, I'll hit E and click and G and bring this out a little bit more. So as you can see, I'm just trying to get that rounded look to it. Once again, and maybe bring it right down to here. I'll tab into object mode and maybe scale that out again just to try and get that a little bit closer to the size of the object right there. So now I can press Control-Alt-Q and go back to the perspective mode, and I'll hit Z to go back into solid shade. Now that we have this in roughly the right shape, I'm going to go ahead and apply the mirror modifier to it. Now let's add a solidify modifier over here in the modifiers panel once again and solidify. And with this we can click on the thickness field and drag, and it will increase the thickness of the object. We need it to go inside like that. Perhaps I'll make it just a slight bit thicker like that, because once we apply a subdivision surface modifier to it, it's going to shrink up just a little bit. So let's go ahead and apply this modifier now, and then we can add our subdivision surface modifier, and I'll take the views up to 2. I'll also come over here to the Tools tab and click Smooth. And now we should tab into Edit mode and add a few edge loops to hold these edges. So I'll press Ctrl R and I'll create 2 edge loops by scrolling the mouse wheel and click, and then I'll press S and Y and scale out so that we move these out just a bit toward the edges. And that helps tighten up those edges just a bit. Now these edges aren't perfectly 90 degrees, as you can see here. They're kind of curved, so we just need to kind of find a placement for these edges that will give us the kind of curve that we're looking for. So also I'll add an edge loop or 2 right in here. Let's see how it works with 2, if that tightens it up a little bit too much or not. That seems to be pretty good. Now that we've established the size, the shape, the subdivisions of the object, now we can begin thinking about creating these holes here. And it looks like we've got 3 rows of holes with 4 each toward the front and the back. So let's begin creating the cutter object that we'll use to cut all these holes. I'll go ahead and move the cursor to the selected object right here. And then let's create a cylinder over here in the Create tab. And instead of just 32 vertices, let's increase that. So the sides of this cylinder are a little bit smoother. Let's take it up to 64 and see how that works. There we go. Also, I can take the cap fill and change it to a triangle fan. And then I'll just scale this down until it's about the size of the holes that we're trying to create. Let's create 4 of them and see. So I would like these equally spaced apart along the y-axis. To do that, I can use one more modifier. I can use the array modifier. So I'll go ahead and add that. And you can see it's added a new one right here. Now we can increase the count, and there we have 4. But the problem is it's going in the x-axis. We need them to go in the y-axis. So instead of 1.0 in the x, let's change that to 0 and change the y, x, y, and z here to 1.0. And now they're traveling in the y-axis. Now I need to spread them apart a bit, so I'll come over here to the constant offset, and in the y, I'll just increase this just a little bit. Still not enough, so I'll just click and drag in there and drag those out. This looks like a pretty good spacing, but it looks like it could be a little bit farther. Let's click and drag this a little bit more. And the nice thing about an array is that I can still modify the original object. So if I hit S and scale these up a bit, it would increase the size of all of them. So I think we're getting there. So maybe right about like this. There we go. I'll also scale up in the Z so it intersects with the object, like that. And we can see them through the bottom of the object. We need to move this down as well. We need to have holes over here. So I'll go ahead and go to my top view and wireframe, and I'll duplicate with Shift D, hit the Y key, and now I'll bring these up here like that as well. Now I'll apply the array modifier for both of these objects. I'll click Apply here, select this one, and click Apply here. And then I'll combine these two with Control J into one object. Now, in addition, we need these other 2 rows on either side. So let's duplicate and move in the X to here, and maybe rotate a bit as well around the Y. Let's press R, Y, and then I'm keeping an eye on the rotation on the bottom left of the screen, and maybe if I take it about 15 degrees here. Let's see how that works. Maybe a little bit more of an angle. I'll press R and Y and bring it another, say, 5 degrees. Now, we can just mirror this over to the other side as well. I'll move the cursor to the center of the grid by pressing Shift C, and that moves the cursor there and then frames everything up. I'll then move this pivot point in the Tools panel to the 3D cursor. I'll also come into the Properties panel with the N key, and let's make sure that our scale and rotation are zeroed out or applied. So I'll press Control A and choose Rotation and Scale. And now let's mirror this over with our mirror modifier right here. And there we go. So if I apply this and then select that center row and combine all of these objects with Control J, now we have a cutter object that we can use to cut into this main piece. However, we still have a modifier on this, and we can't use a subdivision surface modifier as we're using a Boolean. So I need to apply that modifier. I'm going to go ahead and increase the views up to 3. That's going to give me a lot of polygons here. But as we've said before, this isn't the final object. This is just giving us the high resolution detail that we're going to bake into a normal map to apply to the low resolution object. So we can use as many polygons as our computer can handle at this point in time. To see how many polygons we're going to be using, we can come over here and click Flat. So we see this in a flat shaded mode. I can increase the views again and smooth it out even more. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click Apply. And now I'll name the cutting object. I'll press the N key and rename this object from cylinder 001, and I'll call this A_cutter. That's just so that it pops to the top of the list when we pick it in the Boolean modifier. So now if I select the main object, go to Add Modifier and Boolean, I'll come over here to the Object field, click there, and there we can see our A_cutter object. I'll click that. Now, we're currently using the intersect operation, and as you can see, that isn't what we want. So I'll change from intersect to difference. And now if we click Apply and take our cutting object and maybe move it to a whole other layer with M and 2, now we can see we have our object with the holes cut in. And there we go. Very nice.